From the mighty high heights of Salada, Colorado, today's show is brought to you by black-throated Mercantile hats. From dead lot to your head. Jump on their Instagram or Big Cartel. Go get you one. Guys, today we're talking Mutron. By hook or crook, a pretty nice example of an original Mu Tron 3 recently found its way into the studio, so I thought I can't push it off any further, and we got to have the talk. But we have to set the stage first. The Mutron is so associated with Jerry Garcia, so associated with the sound of this band that anytime you type it into Google or YouTube, you're going to hear some Grateful Dead. If let's say you're a funk bass player who's got to have some chewy envelope filter and is shopping around for the right one, you're going to be subjected to hearing some Estimated Prophet. It's just unavoidable. Garcia is totally tied up with the legend of Mike Bingle and this kind of unique unit. There's a bunch of different stuff to talk about. I want to focus on the Grateful Dead and the shift over to the Mutron sound and what all the totality that it stemmed from that. Because it wasn't just buy a new effects pedal and change the sound of the band. What happened is it had to sort of change everything. And it all goes back to New Year's Eve, 1976. I was born in 76, so it holds kind of a special place in my heart with the Grateful Dead. I've listened to every note of the 76 summer tour. And when I was doing research for this video, I went back and started listening to the fall tour because it kind of figures into the story a little bit. New Year's Eve was at the Cow Palace in Daly City. They hadn't played since October, and then it's just a one-off New Year's gig. It's a radio simulcast. And it's kind of like for the night, the Grateful Dead forgot how to be the Grateful Dead in a pretty unique way. They play arrangements of songs that are kind of one-offs, I think. I mean, I haven't totally listened to every single version of Samson and Delilah, but they had the arrangement that's on the album down over the summer with the drummer intro, upbeat and fast. And then for whatever reason on New Year's Eve, they decided to play this stripped-down kind of bluesy version, and it's fantastic. At any rate, I digress. Daly City, coincidentally, the Cow Palace is a well-known venue in the San Francisco Bay Area. The Beatles played there when they toured, I guess, in 63. And the Dead had played there before. They played the sound test show that Gans and I talked about a little bit on our interview video. If you haven't seen that, hop on back and check it out. But whenever I am on the BART and on my way to SFO, when I hear the stop for Daly City, I think of this gig and the sound test gig and the Beatles. At any rate, New Year's Eve rolls around. There's a simulcast broadcast, and the band sounds genuinely surprised to be on stage to me. They're just the banter from Weir and kind of the strange arrangements of things that are in the show. The thing that's different about that night is it's the debut of Garcia's new guitar, the Travis Bean TB 500, and it's the first time that Jerry is using the onboard effects loop. It ties into what we're talking about, Mutrons, because, well, this is purely my conjecture, but Mutrons work on they're an optical triggered filter, and if you've messed around with envelope filters, you know they can be kind of finicky. If you just plug your Strat into one and then plug it into the amplifier, there's some Okay, easy, Tiger. I'm going to stop you right there. Mutrons are envelope-controlled filters, an ECF for short. Control voltage triggers an optical unit that modulates the filter. And at the heart of that arrangement is this, an opto-isolator. Opto-isolators transfer electronic signals between two circuits. The origin of the ECFs is in modular synths. By the 1970s, synths were part of the rock and roll vocabulary. And let's not forget, the Grateful Dead spent 1974 trucking around not only the Wall of Sound, but Ned Lagan's ARP 2600 that he used to perform with Phil for the Seastone set. Keyboards have the advantage of having the note hardwired directly to the circuit, making it a very reliable trigger. This is the idea behind putting the onboard effects loop on the guitar. It creates a more stable platform to send out to the Mutron so that the circuitry inside the Mutron sees a very stable voltage signal. The Mutron is very sensitive to dynamics, pick dynamics and volume dynamics. So if you can take the volume knob out of the equation, it sees the same signal. And then he could use his volume knob to dial back and kind of tame the beast of the volume and all those spikes and ridges that are created with the envelope. But I think that is what Jerry and the Dead ran into when Jerry decided that he wanted to use one of these things. Plugging the guitar straight in to the unit makes it a little challenging to work with. Whereas if you use this onboard effects loop, the signal from the pickups are going directly to the effect. So the attack of the notes isn't quite as crucial. It still is, but it's not as crucial. Now, there's trade-offs with an onboard effects loop. We can talk about that in a later video because the onboard effects loop sort of garners its own subject. What sets Mutrons apart is that the effect itself, the sound of the effect, is really the sweetest version out there. But at any rate, New Year's Eve 76 is the first time we see the Travis Bean. It's the first time we see the onboard effects loop, and it's the first time we also see the Mutron. The show progresses like a lot of Dead shows do. The first set is pretty sedate, bunch of cowboy songs, but they end the set with a really rambunctious and very jammed out playing in the band. Garcia kind of in, I guess, the throwback to like the great playing in the bands from 72 is on his wah throughout the jam psychedelic section, which is interesting. It's kind of an interesting appetizer for what's to come in the second set. I think of Jerry's approach to effect pedal use is like it's on and it stays on kind of thing. It's not really like some guitar players that'll like jump on an effect for one single part and flourish of one moment of a song and then it comes off. Although he does do that, Estimated Prophet kind of springs to mind where when he plays through the head, of course, the Mutron's on, and then during the kind of reggae skanking section, it's a clean guitar sound. But at any rate, mostly, if I had to generalize, the effect comes on and stays on for a good chunk of the song or jam. And that is what we start to see in the second set. The effects start to work their way into the show as the night goes on. There's a wharf rat that comes out midway through set 2, and you hear Jerry using his MXR distortion and the MXR Phase 100. And it's, I think, the first time in live Grateful Dead that those two form for that great phased overdrive kind of swimmy sound that, you know, he makes great use of for years to come. Victim of the Crime, a bunch of different songs, but it's a very kind of iconic Garcia tone. Really, one of the sounds that you're used to hearing. And what I mean by the Dead kind of forgetting how to be the Grateful Dead is that 76 is a weird placeholder where you have the band coming off of hiatus. They fill out the set with some bust outs. Cosmic Charlie came out that summer. And they did a different arrangement of Dancing in the Streets. They did a bunch of things to kind of stretch the set because the new material that is what kind of stands out about 1977 is sort of in the kitchen being made, is the way I like to think about it. So at any rate, in the second set, we get a Scarlet Begonias, but it doesn't have the other half of it attached to it. It's a very kind of 1970s sounding, later 70s sounding Scarlet Begonias. It's not like the 74 ones that are super jazzy and they kind of noodle around and then they bring it back in and play the head again and end the song. I can point you to a bunch from 74 that have that flavor to them and they're great. This one's totally different. It sounds like the way they start to sound in 1977. And that is the first time we hear Garcia use the Mu Tron 3. And it fits right in, except it's sort of as, you know, in 2023, when I've listened to a million Scarlet Fires, you hear the Mutron come on and you want to hear them play Fire in the Mountain, and it's a little unsatisfying in that regard. But the important box is checked in that Jerry has road tested all of his effects. They play this one New Year's Eve gig, and then they go down to LA to Sound City and record Terrapin Station. So anyway, That's the first use of the Mutron. It's kind of this dress rehearsal, I guess. I mean, it's New Year's Eve, but it also has this very kind of like dress rehearsal feel to it, where we're going to methodically try out all the effects, make sure they sound good, make sure it works, make sure this onboard effects loop idea that I cooked up works. Now, obviously, this isn't something that just fell together for this show. It took a long time. I'm sure he ordered the guitar months before, but there is kind of this tantalizing gap between the last shows. They did a fall tour, which ended, I think, in the Midwest somewhere, Detroit maybe. And then they played a couple of shows in LA in October, maybe in San Francisco too. And then that's October 15th. And then the next time they play is the 31st of December. So there's a big gap of time. I don't know if that's when the guitar is delivered or when it's being broken. It certainly wasn't, ordered and put together in that short period of time. But you take my point that New Year's Eve is the confluence of all these things coming together at once. There's a great video about the history of the company Mutron that I can't improve upon, so I'm just going to include it in the link. It's on Reverb's fantastic YouTube site. They interview Mike Bingle. He talks about his education. Turns out he went to MIT and is no slouch in terms of electrical engineering, and originally started making prototypes. He had some kind of a synthesizer deal with Guild Guitars. The owner is killed in a plane crash. That deal goes away, so he gets financial backing and then forms Mutronics, and their flagship one and only pedal is the Mu Tron III that comes out in 1972. Definitely check that video out. It's a great interview. Mike Bingle is, he's a great hang. So it's super fun to listen to. So yeah, that's what I have to tell you about the Mu Tron III and the Grateful Dead. The magic night in Daly City. If you haven't heard that show, absolutely pause this rambling explanation and do yourself a favor and listen to some Grateful Dead. My road to this vintage unit started many, many moons ago, and I have tried a lot of different auto wahs or envelope filters. I've had the mini Qtron. I've had a couple of Qtrons. I recently fried my Qtron that I had a long time ago that I was a great custodian of, but I used the wrong power adapter, which is a big no-no with electro harmonics. So that's in a non-functioning state right now. And I have the Mutron Microtron 4 that I like a whole lot. It's super dependable. It runs on a 9-volt plug, and it sounds great. But there is some tactile, unquantifiable thing that you can't even really hear the difference of, because they sound like exact facsimiles of one another. But the way that it feels under your fingers, the way that the attack of the note and the bloom of the auto wah sounds, man, mwah, chef's kiss. The vintage one is, I don't want to waste a lot of time with a lot of superlatives. It just sounds exactly the way it should and the way you'd expect it to. It's kind of greasy, and it's just kind of a wonderful, sweet sound. If you made it this far, thanks so much for watching. Take a second and hit the subscribe button. We're gaining a little bit of momentum here. There's starting to amass kind of a library. There's an Instagram account. You can follow that too. And as ever, guys, thanks a million for watching. It's just such a pleasure to have some positive feedback. And I really, really, really appreciate you checking it out and spending some time with me here. Leave a comment. Let me know what you like or want to see in the future. And we're going to keep the train rolling. So thanks again. And we'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye.